All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our broadcast. I'm your host, Kayla Lounsbury, Digital Experience Director at Providence's Digital Innovation Group. A reminder before we begin, the content and commentary shared during this event are for information purposes only. For any medical questions, please reach out to your primary care provider or a healthcare professional. With that, let's get started. Joining me today is my colleague, Kevin Madden, AVP of e-commerce at Providence. Welcome, Kevin.
Hi, Kayla. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, good afternoon indeed. To kick us off, Kevin, why don't you tell us about what you do in your role with Providence and DIG's digital experience team?
Sure. Thanks, Kayla. So I'm the AVP of e-commerce, and e-commerce doesn't sound like it naturally fits with healthcare, but in the digital age, it really does. Patients have a profound desire to be able to self-service and schedule online, as well as using online resources as their primary provider research and discovery mechanism. So my role is really about enabling patients to find us externally in search, whether it's Google or an insurance carrier or a third-party platform, and navigate to our shopping tools, whether they be on our site or distributed throughout the internet.
No, I think that's really helpful. I don't think people often equate e-commerce as a function of healthcare. So yeah, that background is super helpful. Talk to me about what's meant by the term reputation economy and why it's important to healthcare systems.
Sure. I mean, the reputation economy is something we all live in, whether we know it or not, and participate in, usually involuntarily, but it definitely is a key component in how patients choose and navigate healthcare. So, we might all know credit scores as an indicator of reputation that's used both for and against us on a regular basis. But there's a lot of factors out there that have decisions regularly being made about us based on data of our own and of people who look like us. Those decisions, again, the data can be used for you or against you, but we live in a world where in digital space, there's so much data being gathered and generated that it's been inevitable that that data starts to turn into profiles and measures of somebody's trustworthiness or reliability, or even, in social networks, karma and abilities to contribute and share, or desire to contribute and share. But all of this is to say that our digital actions are meaningful indicators of our behavior, and as everything is being measured online, all of that data is being used to help make decisions about us, and the same thing happens to providers. This most often happens in the form of review stars and ratings left on sites like Healthgrades or Google or WebMD. All of these become really huge consideration factors in the patient's process, and they'll be likely to visit 2 or 3 different review sites just in consideration of one doctor or provider. So the notion of a reputation economy is really one where everybody is using reputation as currency to make decisions, and in healthcare, it's become the strongest currency which we can use to attract and inform patients.
So would you say it's really paramount among the decision-making factors that consumers are considering as they select a provider?
It is, absolutely. We've been able to gather a lot of data actually that shows, I'll say there was a point when we began online scheduling where we thought providers who have appointments are going to win, and patients will beat down a path to them because patients want to see doctors soon. The reality of it is 5-star doctors who have appointments will have patients beating down the door to them. 4-star doctors, 3-star doctors, not as much, but a 1-star provider, it doesn't matter if you have all of the access and the potentially that a patient could desire. Patients both have to want to see you before they commit to seeing you.
That makes
And
sense.
reputation is what informs that. It's sorry, go ahead, Kayla.
No, of course. I just wanted to make sure you were done, and I think my audio cut out, so apologies for that. So how much visibility would you say that providers have into their own digital reputations?
Well, we know providers tend to search their own names. That's not an uncommon thing, and it's actually very wise of providers to do. When you search your name, that's probably the exact behavior a prospect or potential patient would exhibit, and they're going to see the same things you do. Generally speaking, providers become aware of their reviews when they're negative, but tend not to focus or think too much on the positive. It's been interesting that how much a negative review is a catalyst for action and response as opposed to positive. And what I'll say is providers, yeah, they're usually review the negative or aware of the negative. Seldom are they aware of the need to encourage and solicit positive to outweigh or counteract those negative reviews.
Nope, that makes sense. Would you mind sharing with the audience a little bit of our journey, the history and the evolution of how the digital experience team has looked at our, work in reputation management and why we've focused our strategy in the direction and path that we're on?
Yeah, so like as always in the digital space, we follow the user, and where the user goes, we go. In our case, and especially around reputation, this probably starts around 2016, 2017, when Google put a clear demarcation on the ground and said, we're now mobile first web search. Sorry. Mobile first web search. And what mobile first web search has meant is one, localization for all devices on, or all users on mobile devices. Whatever you search, whether it's doctor near me or just doctor or pizza or tacos, Google takes signals from your device as to where you are, where you're standing, your search history, all of those things, and presents you with a choice of businesses, often sorted by review stars. As Google has made a very conscious effort to become more of a portal themselves, they've been less and less inclined to send people off their site. So they've recreated a lot of functionalities from formerly dominant businesses like Yelp and kind of stepped into the review space. And as they've done that, they've recognized that reviews are a key consideration factor for users. So they've put reviews front and center. So as we've shifted to mobile and local, we inevitably were faced with the reviews that were being generated by us, whether we asked for them or not. And it very quickly became our biggest opportunity to inform and educate patients to the quality of our services.
Very good. And getting a bit into the weeds, what does our reputation management program look like, or I guess how does the system work?
It's a big program. We have almost 20,000 providers at Providence, and beyond that, almost 5,000 locations. Each one of those is an entity that has its own repository and reputation, and its own container for patients to leave reviews. Every single one of those needs to be managed. So we've come up with kind of a multi-tier strategy where, first and foremost, providers are the ones that should be enabled to engage and respond to their reviews. Reviews aren't a marketing tool, or we don't see them as one. Like, does it help marketing? Yes. Does it help inform patients' decision-making process? Absolutely. But the quality of care a provider gives is actually much more important than even the perception online. So providers are put right in the driver's seat and able to really manifest their own destiny when it comes to reputation, but we give them the tools and the platform to perceive all incoming reviews as they're left. We actually apply a lot of processing and whether it's natural language processing or sentiment processing to distill the reviews into something really meaningful for providers to create a feedback loop to improve care. That's the most important thing here. This is a path for patients to communicate to providers and providers to improve their quality of care. It just happens that this is occurring in a public forum that anybody can drop in on and perceive the patients. So provider a lot of system-wide processes that are put in place to support them and back them up. And that looks like the platforms which they use to review and to consider and respond to reviews. It also looks like the solicitation and outreach we do on behalf of our providers for a patient. When it comes to improving reviews, like this isn't a game of patient manipulation. It's really a practice of letting patients know that they're being considered, that they're being heard, that we care about what they have to say, and that we're going to do things differently if necessary. So, sorry, well, just lost my train of thought there. So, providers, first and foremost, but we need to solicit reviews on behalf of those providers, encourage patients to leave positive reviews. Where I was going with that is if you want to improve your review scores, the biggest thing is just asking for them if you haven't before. The old maxim is that you never have to encourage somebody to leave a negative review, and that the inverse would apply for a positive review. Squeaky wheels will squeak, and they need oil, but the wheels that are spinning very fluidly are the ones that could use the ask, the outreach to say, hey, if you had a great experience, will you let others know? And just that has been better than double, if not triple, the average review rating of our providers, because it's not left to those who have had negative experiences or perceptions. You open the audience to everybody who's seen that provider.
And what have been some of our best or better working practices around that solicitation process?
The biggest upside is I'd say the timeliness of the whole process. I mean, first, getting to the patient when the experience is fresh in their mind is going to be when they're going to have the most constructive feedback. Again, like our goal isn't to just get good reviews, it's to get reviews and use them as an input and informative signal. So get timely and fresh reviews. They tend to be positive, they tend to be more constructive, they tend to be more accurate. So we definitely want to capture the patient in their kind of moment of occurrence. Beyond that, it's responding to them as almost instantly as possible. And that's what the platforms allow us to do. Generally, when patients leave negative reviews, they don't want to leave a negative review. In fact, they often feel guilty about it. And the implications to businesses are pretty profound at the end of the day. But if a patient leaves a negative review, more than anything, they just want to be heard. They want to know that there's someone out there listening to them and considering what they have to say. And if we can respond to those reviews in 24 hours, generally without provocation or request, the patients will take them down if they feel that their grievance or issue has been satisfied. Most of the time, it's just reaching out to say, we hear you, we're sorry this happened to you, and we're here to make it right. And that will nullify the negative review. So that's been a critical part of the program, but it's all about getting to the patient quickly, getting back to them quickly, and being engaged with them as caregivers should be, rather than saying thank you for coming to see it. We'll see you next time. In between, that is about process improvement and refinement, and all of that happens with timely and almost instant responses.
No, that's great. That idea of bringing that quality of care and service that they receive in person from their provider into that digital space and having that representation and interaction there of what that care looks like. That's awesome. Um, so knowing that all of this work is ongoing and happening every day at Providence, I guess how well is it working for us? What are some of the results that you're seeing?
Well, I mean, with reputation, like the whole notion of the program is that there is always room for improvement. So, with that being in mind, we've seen the program is very successful because just having that outreach, response, and remediation channel allows for reviews to get better. And over time, when reviews are better, we show up more in search. When we show up more in search, we get more attention, more mind share, more consideration, and ultimately more patients. Without getting into a whole lot of detail, where we have been able to successfully ramp up the program, and it's to say we're a big system and we're working our way through, but there's a number of regions that are already highly engaged users, and we've been able to get the average provider review score over 3.7, which is better than our competitors in market. And for our most highly engaged providers, they are consistently over 4-star providers. Those are the providers that people are looking for. Those are the providers that show up when people search best doctor or best oncologist or best oncologist near me. So the influx of traffic and demand has actually been great. When we have providers who are over 4 stars and were previously under 2, they get more than 50% more inquiries from patients.
That's amazing. Where do you see our program headed next?
So there's a lot of room to grow here. We focus on the reviews that patients perceive most often, which are going to be in Google. They're going to be on third-party sites like HealthGrades and WebMD. They're the most visible places. They show up in search always or consistently. So we've been focusing on kind of those big hitters, the highly visible places, the forums with the most audience, but there's a lot of other places which reviews can happen. And one of the things we really want to do is we're gathering so much good data about our providers, is making sure we share it out to others. So kind of the next stage and form of this program is going to be to take our reviews that we gather and share them with our commercial payer partners, like insurance companies and other third parties, where employer portals are another, where they have provider directories, they have search functionality, but the patients aren't given the data they want to consider and select a provider. So we're building a data set that allows for really strong consideration, and there's a lot of detail wrapped up in reviews around bedside manner and personality and things that allow patients to say, this is the exact doctor I'm looking for. And we want that to permeate as many sources as possible. This is very valuable data, and if it's not shared, we're not maximizing its potential.
And the thought of behind sharing and syndicating that data to those, payer sites and other third-party sites, really being that's where that provider search is occurring, right? That's where that decision is being made, and bringing forth that information a few steps further in the decision-making process.
Very much so. Whether new or return patients, there's different journeys. There's almost an infinite amount of patient journeys, and we've kind of, approached our website, our top tier partner websites first. But as we continue to expand the program, it's getting into each potential portal that a patient may access.
That makes perfect sense. Is there anything else about the program that maybe we didn't cover today, or things you'd want to share or have? I guess, what advice would you maybe give other health systems who are in various stages along this journey of developing these programs?
Yeah, I'd say like one of the biggest things, like reviews happen in two different, reviews occur in the patient journey in a couple different ways. One is this verification and validation process. You might find a provider, have a referral, a recommendation, and then you're going to do additional research on that individual provider, which is where you're going to find reviews from 10 or 20 different sources, and potentially hundreds of reviews scattered between them. That's a consideration process that is very specific to providers, but where this program really provides a lot of benefit, are highly inclined to start searching for the best options for them. Who is the best doctor near me? Who is the best pediatric oncologist? Or who is the best dermatologist? Who is the best dermatologist for? There's a lot of personal nuance that comes in the journey, and patients always want to find the best match for them, and that's how they search. So when it comes to something like going to Google and saying, give me the best dermatologist, the first thing Google does is eliminate all providers who are under 4 stars. So reviews aren't just a way to reaffirm or build trust. They're a way to get into the consideration set. It's not just needing to participate in a U.S. news program to be considered a best provider, or paying some other service for an accreditation. What it is, it's about the reputation as it lives in the wild. And if a health system or hospital wants to be the best at anything they do and truly considered the best, it's not just awards that they're going to declare, it's the sentiment of their patients that's going to determine that in the popular zeitgeist.
That makes sense. Anything else?
Beyond just a big consideration factor, one thing we've learned along the way is it's not just new patients who are using and considering reviews. It is referrals. It is return patients. Patients will search their doctor that they have an existing relationship with and verify reviews. What they want is an affirmation that they are getting the best care or the quality of care they think they're getting. And reviews can be just as much as they're an opportunity to bring patients into the system, they're an opportunity for patients to flee in mass. If you're a provider, if you're a clinic, if the place we told you to go is a 2-star clinic, it would be interesting. But you're probably, you're probably ill-informed to go there based on that, or that would be a reasonable assumption for a patient to make and to change their own course of care. So we see reputation not just as a growth medium, but as a retention mechanism as much as anything, and a referral support mechanism. We want to be able to, give patients assurances that when provider A says go to provider B, that the patient will always know that that provider is the best provider for them. And, I guess what that gets to is we also enable our providers to use our reviews to consider each other. If it comes to referring a patient, our directories, our services give the providers the metadata they need so they can evaluate another provider based on their fit to the patient. And that's very effective too. But reviews permeate the journey long after the patient enters and are something that they're going to be considering and comparing throughout their healthcare experience.
And what's their staying power? Like, what kind of frequency, recency is kind of necessary to be considered in consumer choice of a provider?
Sure. So that's a kind of an interesting thing. Reviews tend to not go away. In fact, there's a permanence to them that is pretty daunting to some providers, and has actually led a lot of people to say, like, this seems like it's unmanageable. I have reviews from the week after I got out of med school, and I don't know what to do about it. Like, there's a lot to do about it, and it's about getting more recent, fresh reviews. In the patient's mindset, a 5-year-old review is going to be a lot less relevant than a 6-month-old review. So we work very hard in our solicitation programs to keep as fresh and as active a flow of reviews to Google. It's also indicative. It's a really strong signal of that beyond just a provider's ability to get reviews, but of the demand for that provider and desirability of that provider. As Google sees more reviews coming in for business, they perceive that business as more popular and therefore more relevant to their users. So freshness is always a thing. It's obviously going to be rate limited by the patient load and patient acquisition, and we don't want to bury our patients in review requests. We're very deliberate in at what points in their journey we're going to ask them for what type of review or where we're going to ask them to go. But we don't want to have them walk away thinking we're pandering. We want them to know that we care about what they think and their feedback is helpful to us.
Yep, and that we're going to take action based on that.
Yes.
Definitely inspires confidence. We do have a question or two that came in from social media world, so I will read that off for you. But can you tell us about the technology that you're using in your solution? Did you build it yourself or did you partner with others?
Absolutely. So there's a lot of data. I mean, we use a couple different platforms, and there's a couple different layers of review management. We have a very strong partnership with Binary Fountain, who is a affiliate of Press Ganey, who historically have done our provider feedback surveys and already had a good foothold in the system. But the Binary Fountain platform is almost entirely self-contained as a destination for review solicitation, compilation, analysis, and engagement and interaction. It's a strong platform, but it does necessarily dovetail into other platforms we have. Our provider directory, powered by Kairos, also needs to integrate so we can publish the reviews on our site. Our Google My Business listings The presences we syndicate out to third parties are managed through our partnership with Yext, and Binary File integrates very nicely with that, so we can measure and perceive our reviews not just on our own websites, but on the hundreds of other places that represent us. So Binary File is really the hub, but it does have tendrils that go out into our syndication programs, our directory programs, and of course our master data and our Press Ganey reviews. It all comes together to provide actually one very nicely unified interface for our providers, where they can see their patient feedback surveys from Press Ganey, their third-party reviews, their first-party reviews, all contained in the Binary Fountain interface, with the very explicit intent of informing providers so they can provide better care.
And the ability to, engage within that platform. I believe you shared a stat internally not too long ago about how those who are engaging and really managing the reviews in that process just seeing much better outcomes overall in terms of their reviews.
Yes, and it goes there's a number of factors for that. I'd say first and foremost, a review solicitation program isn't going to be enabled if there's no net to capture the reviews. If the provider hasn't, isn't a regular user, if they haven't enrolled in the program, we're not going to be actively soliciting on their behalf. But once they do, there are several kind of tiered steps of engagement, where generally the higher the engagement, the better their reviews can be. So even a casually engaged provider will have review solicitation happening. It's the providers, though, who respond to reviews are the ones who have the fewest negative reviews, and generally doing so in 24 hours. So if there were one secret weapon to squashing out negative reviews, it's have enough engagement where you're responding to your patients in 24 hours, where they know you care, where they know they're being considered, and they think about the sentiment and the purpose of why they left a review. More often than not, it's just to be heard, and it's because it's a convenient communication forum.
Very good. Within our last few moments here, anything else you'd want to share?
This is not going away. I'll say reviews have been something we've struggled with at Providence in terms of positioning. Where does it sit? Who owns it? Because they permeate so much of the patient experience. Marketing would have a rightful place, because no matter how effective your marketing campaign is, a low-reviewed provider, a low-reviewed hospital will turn that patient right away. So the marketing implications are very strong, but there's a permanence to these reviews. It's a lot like when we were small and people would tell us about our permanent records. I don't think we knew about credit scores then, but if you're a business facing patients or consumers, your digital reputation will outlive you. It will outlive your time with the health system. It'll outlive your time with the clinic. It will follow you around. Investing in it early is one of the best things you can do for long-term growth, but maintaining that investment is something that will sustain practice. There's no shortage of stories of one-star providers or one-star clinics going under because they couldn't generate the foot traffic. They're turning away patients before they could even get to the door.
So it's not going anywhere. Stay on top of it.
It is. It's only going to become more prolific, and it's probably going to become more opaque as things go forward. It's such a critical decision-making process. Google's already started pulling it under the hood into their algorithmic secret sauce, and it's less about waiting on relevance or content now, but it's about what's the best result for the patient. As that gets more opaque, the significance of reviews are going to only go up. So this is the type of program that it's invest early, invest often, and you really have to buy it for life.
Very good. We did have another question come in from LinkedIn. Are you mostly soliciting reviews via email or text? And are you asking for reviews at the end of your patient experience surveys, or is it independent outreach?
It's going to depend. Patient experience surveys have a very purposeful role in our system, and they are kind of the most articulated feedback mechanism we could provide to our providers, so they take precedence in a lot of cases. If a patient, generally speaking, at the end of a patient experience survey, the patient will always be asked if they would like to leave a review on a third-party site to help other patients. But following that, we have a structured set of touch points where if somebody's received the patient experience survey, we'll wait till their next visit to solicit reviews for third parties, but we'll almost always try to have a review touch point following a visit if the patient has not left a review for us. Beyond that, there are ethical questions about, can we encourage patients to leave reviews in person? Can the provider ask the patient to leave reviews? And we do try to insulate ourselves from that. At best, at the point of care, it might be a card that with a QR code or a sticker on the door that gently reminds patients to leave reviews. We try not to be forceful at all. But following the visit, SMS is the primary path, and we do want reviews to be fresh. So we kind of stay out of email unless it's a medium of last resort. If we don't have other means to reach a patient, if they haven't responded via SMS or they've opted out to SMS, email will be our fallback. But generally speaking, it doesn't receive the type of engagement or interaction that an SMS will within 24 hours.
No, that makes perfect sense with our on-demand communication as consumers and people, and just the immediacy, unfortunately, to which we respond to text, it feels like these days. Well, I know we're at time, so Kevin, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today, and to everyone who joined for listening and sending in your questions. And to learn more about our initiatives and programs and services at Providence, or if you're looking for medical care, you can visit providence.org. And for more information and resources from Providence Digital Innovation Group, you can visit providence-dig.org. And make sure to follow us on all the social media channels, which are Providence Health System for LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, and at Providence on Twitter. Thank you again, Kevin, for your time always.
Yes. Thank you.
And thank you to everyone else on the call, and have a great afternoon.